Welcome back to the Highland Point Survival Guide. Today we're going to be taking a deeper look at some more advanced concepts for each of our employee types and explain the best way to optimize each of them and get the most out of your properties. I'm going to try and make this guide as fast as possible to save you guys time, and I'm going to break this guide down into sections for each employee one by one, so you can skip to whichever section you need. Let's get straight to it. Cleaners are the most simple of all of our employees. All they do is clean up the trash in your properties and throw it in the dumpster outside. The only thing I have to say about them is that employees are prone to getting hung up in between certain objects. So try and make sure there aren't any pathing issues when you place your trash cans. Usually, employees can have issues when there are trash cans, suspension racks, or shelves and packaging stations, or even brick presses too close together. I try and leave at least one tile around 3 sides of the trash can, and definitely avoid placing them in corners if possible. In general, always just try and be mindful about your spacing and try to allow for 1 to 2 tiles when possible to do so. Handlers are our next employee, and they are the backbone of automation. Without them, you won't be able to keep anything running on its own. They can work on either of the packaging stations or the brick press, as well as use their 5 clipboard assignments to move items between shelves and stations. Keep in mind that the order of the assignments on the clipboard is the order that they'll be prioritized from top to bottom. And if the handler is assigned to a station, he will always work on packaging before his other assignments if there's product in the station to be packaged. So if a packager is overloaded, he might not have time to be able to keep up with other assignments. For example, if you're making 40 bricks of weed per day in a single property and sending it to 1 brick press, that handler won't have time to do 5 more jobs on top of that each day. This is because 40 bricks is roughly the maximum that he can press in a day if he's not working on anything else. Now, this will really only affect the early game because packaging station Mark 1 and 2 can't package as fast as a brick press. And late game, it will really only affect large weed grows because coca is limited to around 11 bricks and meth is limited to around 21 bricks in a single property. But it also depends on what their other tasks are and how much movement that they need to do. It's always best to try and minimize the amount of walking that your handlers need to do, to try and optimize their routes in terms of walking distance between shelves and stations if possible. In addition to this, using item filtering is key for automation and allows you to fully AFK from your properties and ensure that no systems will get backed up or disorganized. Remember, you can use item filters on all storage racks and safes, as well as workstations like labs, mixers, or packaging stations, and this can be used if you need your handlers to sort through different items or different product qualities from a single shelf for transferring to specific stations, such as mixers or designating 3 ingredients for cooking meth at a chemistry lab. And on the topic of meth, we can get into our chemists. These guys are going to be handling the labs, ovens, cauldrons, and mixers. Each chemist can be assigned to 4 of these stations, but to better understand how they function, we need to take a look at the stations themselves. The cauldron has 4 input slots and 1 output slot. This means we can have up to 4 stacks of coca leaves in it at all times. The single output slot will output 10 base for each 20 stack of coca leaves. The chemistry lab has 3 input slots. Right now, this is used 1 for each meth ingredient, and each ingredient stacks up to 10. It also has a single output slot for the liquid meth, which also stacks to 10. Now finally, there's the lab oven. It has 1 input slot and 1 output slot. However, the input slot holds a stack of 20 base, but each cook will only finish 10 base at a time. So it's essentially 2 input slots. For chemists, the lab is the most important part to optimize because it is the final stage of output for both meth and coke. This means it's best to try and position the labs as close as possible to the door in order to minimize the chemist's walking time, because they will always have to walk in and out of the building due to the 6-hour timers. Unless they're assigned to just 4 mixers, in which case they will stay in their area all day, and you won't need to worry too much about downtime spent walking. Now, on top of that, we also know that we want to make sure that each station is always queued up with a second batch ready to be made. especially in the lab ovens because that's the final output. By keeping a second batch queued up, this will further reduce even more time spent walking back and forth in between their stations and optimize the output as well as dial in on consistency of production. This is easily accomplished by just allowing your system to fill up entirely before turning on the ovens for the final output. It does seem like a minor detail and it isn't totally necessary, but it is the only way to fully optimize the chemist production if that's something that you would like to accomplish. In summary, these guys function best when closest to the idle location, although mixing is fine to place further away if needed. But most importantly, we want them to always be queued up for every cook to minimize walking time throughout the day. Now, moving on to our final employee and my personal favorite, the botanist. There's a lot of nuance to optimizing your botanist, but again, in order to save time on this video, I'm going to try and lay this out as simply and as straightforward as I possibly can. I previously made a video series discussing the output of both weed and coca leaves and the use of drying racks. So if you're looking for more specific numbers or other information, feel free to check those out. But for our purposes here, I won't go into all the numbers, and instead I'm just going to tell you what I think is best. When growing weed, you should almost always be using moisture preserving pots and full spectrum lights. This will be the best setup for most builds, and a botanist can handle 6 pots when using regular soil or 8 pots when using the long life soil. I generally recommend running setups with 6 pots and base soil until you have extra money laying around, and this is because the extra 2 plants only add a small total increase, which does matter in the long run, but it is expensive and will slow you down pretty significantly in the early game. I do want to say there may be some potential niche uses for air pots when growing weed, but only if your circumstances require using less than 6 pots per botanist for whatever reason, and they would likely need to be near the idle location. In addition, it is my opinion that you should never use any additives when growing weed as they raise the cost to grow too much. This will significantly slow down your progress. When not using any additives, growing base weed is actually the highest possible profit in the entire game for every property, far over the other base products. For this reason, I always prefer to compensate any quality requirements by using drying racks and allow all quality increases to be done for free, keeping cash in your pocket. I can't stress enough, using fertilizer does not increase output in any property and will always slow your progress and make it more expensive to produce weed. Our next topic is coca, and this one is clear from both a cost perspective as well as a space and time perspective. It's always best to use all 3 additives. Simply put, you can produce more leaves per seed while using less botanists to grow them. This increases your profit margin by a large amount. As for the topic of pots, the answer is simple. Most cases will be best when using moisture pots. Although air pots provide a significant speed increase to growing, they lose too much time due to the botanists not being able to keep up with watering them as often. The easiest way to explain this is that when using all additives on a coca grow, it will lock your botanist at the pots all day, reducing walking time from the idle point and allowing them to continue watering everything in a cycle. When using the moisture pots, this allows them to work on 7 to 8 pots compared to only 6 when using the air pots. This is due to the greater amount of time in between those watering stages. So this comes down to a difference of total plants harvested each day. And the way that these cycles fall, it allows 7 to 8 moisture pots to beat 6 air pots. Now let's take everything that we've learned here and package it all into a few simple rules to follow when we make our builds in the future. Number 1. Chemists should always have priority over the other employees for their stations to be closest to the door and the employee idle point. This is because the chemist is always the final output before packaging. In addition to that, their stations should always be stocked and remain queued up for the next cook, especially the lab ovens. Rule number 2. The handlers should have minimal walking distance in between any storage shelves and stations, in order to maximize their effective uptime and try and balance out the weight of their assignments so that none of them get overloaded on packaging or resupplying. Number 3. Botanists can be placed further away from the door due to being locked on top of their pots all day, so they will only need to walk into the building once per day rather than multiple times per day. We also learned that we have our weed being grown in base soil with 6 pots or 8 pots with long life soil, and we will never use any additives on weed. And finally, coca is optimized by using either 7 or 8 moisture pots, and always using all 3 additives in order to lock the botanists in their growing area and increase total leaf production and profit per seed by a huge amount. I hope this quick overview helps you make your future layouts, but if you're looking to save even more time, go and check out one of my other builds. I make different styles of builds for different purposes and different stages of the game, if that's something that you're interested in. But anyways, guys, thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.